All right, this is going to feel like a little bit of a deviation from my usual series on pragmatic Japanese swordsmanship, martial arts, things like that. I want to take a few minutes to present an exercise from the way back, early in my training in traditional Japanese swordsmanship. Now, on the surface, this exercise is going to seem, well, kind of flaky, but there are a lot of good things I took out of it and good training that I got from it. And there is a specific lesson that is not necessarily obvious on the surface. Now, if you guys see this coming before I get to it, let me know in the comments. But yeah, there is an ultimate lesson to be had here. But before we proceed, again, I don't consider myself any kind of master expert, anything like that. I never intend to contradict anything that you are practicing, being taught, learning. Also, yes, I did learn this as part of my training in traditional Japanese swordsmanship, but I never intend that anything that I'm presenting to you to be the teachings of any traditional Koryu. I've certainly changed how I personally do this over the years. And yes, I actually still do this exercise from time to time, or just have other people try it to see what their results are. So this is me passing it on to you. I'm going to be doing it with a bokken for a couple of different reasons. One, tradition. It's where I started in terms of practicing, and I do recommend that you start with a bokken versus a sharp sword, especially in something like this. So there is that aspect of that other caveat. Don't try this at home. I'm not what anybody would call an expert. Let's go with safety. And yeah, what I'm about to show you is probably faster than the shutter speed of my camera, but maybe this will give you a better chance of seeing what's going on, and or at least hear it. We'll see how my microphone functions to give you a better sense of what's actually happening here and potentially not happening here. Anyway, getting down to business, the name of the exercise is Beat the Mirror. All right, you're going to need three things to do this exercise, two of which go together, but the first one is a bokken. And I strongly recommend a bokken and not a shinken, not a live blade. Why? Because the first iteration of this exercise, and the one I'm about to show you, uses one of the most common cuts trained in traditional Japanese swordsmanship, which is that 12 o'clock downward vertical. I've heard many names for it. The one I tend to stick to is shomenuchi, from the jodan position, from here straight down. Now, because we're going to be pushing speed in this exercise, and eventually power, if you lose control in this downward cut, the sword is aiming at you. So unless you are really, really comfortable with doing this, do not use a live blade. Now, could you do this with other kind of cuts that are arguably safer to the user? Sure, and we'll talk about that. But I'm still going to recommend safety first. Now, mirror. If you are part of a modern gym, school, dojo that has wall mirrors, and they'll let you do this in their space, well, that's the third thing you're going to need, is space. Hopefully they'll let you do it there. Maybe you're already practicing swordsmanship there, so this is just another thing you can practice and try out and see if you can benefit from the things that it's actually quite good at teaching you. But if not, well, how much mirror do you need and how much space do you need? Well, when it comes to space, for this overhead cut, you definitely want to have enough ceiling clearance to be able to do it and not hit what's above you. Also, have enough room between yourself and whatever mirror or reflective surface you're using that you don't hit that. So I'm not going to be able to show this to you facing the camera because there's not quite enough room for me to do it without hitting my equipment. So I'm going to have to show it to you facing the side like this, and my mirror would be over there. Or maybe not a mirror. Maybe it's a full-length mirror, or wall mirror, door mirror, or maybe it's just a big window. For instance, using your environment, if it's nighttime, you're in a lit space and outside is dark, you've got a reflection on the glass. If you are working outside in bright sunlight, you might have a reflection on one of the windows of, whatever house or whatever you've got, apartment that you could face. It might, if it's not your window, that might certainly scare whoever's on the other side of the glass. But we make use of our environment if we don't have better resources. But I want to make sure that I have plenty of clearance between myself and that. The name of the game isn't beating on the mirror. I want to have at least a foot or more away from that fragile surface to do this. How much do I need to be able to see? Well, I need to be able to see the path of my sword, not necessarily my whole body, but whatever the path of your sword is from start to stop. Now, I've talked about my cutting stroke lengths in other videos, short, medium, long, and yours may vary just like, well, the starting point. Whatever your Jodan position is may be quite different. Now, think about the frame of this video that you're watching. In this case, you can see the sword over my head, not all of it, but most of it, right? And I'm going to use what I call a medium cutting stroke length in this exercise, so I will stop the sword while it's still visible in the camera shot. Your cutting stroke length might be longer, so you want to be able to see where the sword starts and stops, okay? Now, starting this exercise, we are not focused on power or maneuvering or anything but these specific things. I'm going to start in an upright stance, and for my benefit, because I'm not going to be moving my body, it's right foot forward, fairly narrow. I'm going to be starting in my version of Jodan. Yours may be different, but I want to face my reflection and try to become as still as I can, okay? Now, what I want to do is initiate the cut without telegraphing that to my reflection, not being able to see myself move before I move. So that means no chambering, right? This is great for training, no chambering. I want to start, cut, and stop as suddenly and stilly as I can. And see that happen in the mirror. Move before I see myself, telegraphing that move, and stop as dead as I can. Okay? That's the first thing to work on. And then get as much speed in that. Now, over time, you can put maneuvering behind it. You can put more body mechanics, more power. And as I said, yes, you could try it with other cuts. Absolutely. But get the basics of, well, the stillness versus the speed down first. Now, if you've been training with a Japanese sword, you know you tend to put more muscle into stopping a blade than initiating a cut, especially in this cut where you're working against gravity. So when it comes to training, I don't recommend you do this cut as repetitively at the beginning as you would other repetitive cut training, like doing 100 cuts or 300 cuts or whatever, because stopping the sword suddenly at speed and under power, yeah, it's a great way to injure yourself, get tendinitis. So I would treat it more as a meditative exercise, or kind of like your Tama Shigiri, put more focus into each individual cut and not worry about the number of times you do it. Just try to get the best cut you can each time, and maybe do it half a dozen times per practice session or something like that. Don't hurt yourself doing it. But the idea is to start from stillness, do not telegraph, and stop with as much stillness as possible. Now, in between, you're going to be watching that arc of the cut. And here is the trick. When you stop your cut, you're going to get tactile feedback back through your muscles and your skeleton that tell you it's come to a stop. Just like if you're driving a car, you feel the car come to a complete stop. It might not have come to a complete stop, but at least that's what you can tell the officer who pulls you over, right? You'll feel yourself stop. Can you feel yourself stop and still see, at least for a fraction of a second, your reflection sword still moving? Can you feel yourself stop before you see your reflection stop? Can you beat the mirror? Can you beat your own reflection? You practice this for a while, again, focusing on speed first and then worrying about power and other things later. Stillness to quickness. And there will be a point where, oh my God, I'm moving faster than the speed of light. No, you're not. Now, yes, if you're a physicist and measure time like that, you could argue that the time the light takes to reflect from the sword to the mirror and then back to your eye, there's some time that happens there, but no, you're not that quick. What's happening is the delay between you tactically feeling yourself stop through your body and that message getting to your brain versus your visual processing getting through your brain. So, surface lesson is you're practicing a lot of really useful skill. Being able to cut without telegraphing. It's fantastic in combat. Being able to stop a blade, no matter how fast or powerfully you're cutting, on a dime instantly, gives you fantastic control of your weapon so that you can change tactics, reverse course, respond to a chaotic situation, or not overswing if you miss your target, right? Starting and stopping. Fantastic practice. Then is while you're doing this, you're working on speed and then adding power to the equation. But the hidden lesson, if you're relying on your eyes to watch your opponent's weapon, whether it's their blade or their fists, to be able to predict and see things coming and respond to them, it's too slow. Just a fraction. Too slow. And that's enough in a fight, especially if you're talking about somebody who's fighting at combat speed. If you're relying on your eyes, you're risking being too late and you're going to get hit before you can respond. Compared to other things that we'll talk about in future videos that can be better at doing that, like maneuvering and distancing and guards and, yes, tactile feedback. And other things you can be doing with your eyes. We'll talk about that too. But if you try to watch the weapon move, or the fist, or whatever it is, it's just not going to quite be fast enough. So, did you see that one coming? Pun sort of intended before I got to it. Did that make sense? Let's get that conversation going in the comments. As usual, thanks for watching. Don't break anything. Don't hurt yourself. And I hope to see you back for more.